to a special public meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have a roll call, please?
Council members Friedman.
Here.
Manukian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Quintero.
Here. May we have your report?
Agenda for the October 9, 2012 special meeting, public meeting of the City Council was posted on Thursday, October 4, 2012 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. And the item before you is Director of Community Development. Actually, there's two items. The first one is Director of Community Development regarding proposed Colorado Gardens project to be located at 124 West Colorado Street and 203 West Elk Avenue. 1A is council motion approving design review submission. At 1B is council motion approving instrument imposing a covenant on real property.
Ms. Spears.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we go to Roger Kiesel, our senior planner, to take you through this project.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council. Again, my name is Roger Kiesel. I'm a planner with the Planning Department. Con Consulting is requesting approval of Stage 1 and Stage 2 design for the Colorado Gardens project located at 124 West Colorado and 203 West Elk Avenue. The project before you this afternoon is essentially the same as a proposal that you all approved November 15th of last year. In terms of the architecture, the building mass, parking layout, materials, that sort of thing.
Was that a unanimous decision?
I believe it was, but I would need to check. Yeah. The applicant has redesigned the Elk Avenue landscape setback to qualify for the public open space height story density bonus in lieu of what was last year approved, the sustainable design.
Do you have a PowerPoint or anything on this?
I do have some
Slides.
pictures. Yeah. Would you like me to put those up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Since we're talking about design, right?
Right. Okay, this is the site plan. On the right-hand side is Elk Avenue. The left side is the alley, and the publicly accessible open space is right adjacent to Elk Avenue. The project site is on it's approximately 21,900 square feet.
Roger.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry.
Roger, if you want to advance the slide, the controller's ready.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm mixing it up with the next project.
Which one are we doing here?
Yeah, this is Colorado Gardens. I'm
Right.
sorry. Elk Avenue is on the right-hand side. Colorado Street is on the left side. I apologize. The publicly accessible open space is adjacent to both streets. The Elk Avenue has been redesigned and to comply or to bring about the density or the density height bonus for the project.
Sorry. Excuse me, you said redesigned since our last look at the project?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So the project is on a through lot. Can you? The building is 5 stories high with a mezzanine and approximately 70 feet in height. These are the front elevations of the building. The wider elevation on top is the view from Elk Avenue, and then the lower right-hand side is the front elevation from Colorado Street.
How high is the building?
It's approximately 70 feet high.
70?
Yes. These are the two side elevations. The west side elevation is, again, Colorado's is on the left-hand side, and Elk is on the right-hand side, and then the lowest east elevation.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
So it's 70 feet high. Across the street, the Americana's how high? The residential?
70.
It's
70, thank
the condominium building is slightly higher than 70 feet. It's roughly in line with Nordstrom's currently being constructed.
This is on Colorado South? South of
Correct.
Colorado?
Yeah, it's basically directly south of where they're building Nordstrom's.
Okay.
The project will contain 50 residential units, and those units will be anywhere from 1 to 4 bedrooms. And 84 parking spaces with 2 subterranean parking levels. Lobbies are located on both Colorado as well as Elk Avenue facades of the building, and vehicular access is taken from Elk Avenue. The Elk Avenue setback has been improved and increased in size to qualify for the DSP open space incentive. As you may know, the DSP standards require 5% of the lot area to be publicly accessible open space. And on this particular site, that translates into a minimum 1,095 square feet of space that's required to be publicly accessible.
Roger, can you show us what that looks like and how the public will know that that's accessible to them and not something that's private to this building?
Sure.
I saw that slide, but I couldn't figure out where the public is and where there's a space there that's for the public.
Okay. This area here, adjacent to Colorado, is all public, and there are some benches in this area, I believe. And this is the entrance to the lobby. The area along, adjacent to Elk, is this area here. This area here. And there are, this is a landscape wall, seating wall, right here adjacent to the street. And then this area here.
Is it a seating wall?
Yeah, it's like a low landscape wall, seating wall that people sit on. And then there, the steps to the lobby are right here, and then this area here is all open to the public and includes, there's a fountain here, and then benches here, and then landscaping sort of around.
Mr. Mayor, do you mind me asking a question?
No.
I guess this is more a question than maybe for Mr. Loomis. Do you believe, as an architect, that the public's going to recognize this as public space as opposed to just space in an apartment building, and that they'd actually feel comfortable using this space as open space?
Yes, and there's a little bit of a qualification here because this is purely a residential project. In particular on Elk, it's facing a residential street as opposed to Brand or Central, where we have much more commercial activity. And open space on those streets tends to be occupied by outdoor dining for cafes or artwork. One of the concerns that we dealt with this project is, what does it mean to have publicly accessible public space that's actually leading to the front door of a residential building? So the sort of design intention is a little bit toned down from, say, a cafe space, but it's still designed to be inviting to the public. The benches face outwards towards the street or face towards the main walk. But in both cases, it's the average person walking by may say, well, that's simply a very nice walkway going to the front door of a residential building. But the fountain is outside of the gate facing onto the street. The steps are very low. It's not a sort of steep set of stairs. It's 2 steps up, then a landing, then 2 more steps, very gradual. So that the average person walking by might feel like they could just sort of take a break, stop there and sit on a bench and rest for 10 minutes as they're, say, walking around the block or waiting for a friend to come pick them
Okay,
up.
so you feel comfortable then that it's inviting enough to the public and not private the way apartment buildings tend to be with their open space, so that the public will feel encouraged to use the space?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and a big part of it was the orientation of the benches to sort of face out towards the sidewalk and not be enclosed within. So the design sort of is a funnel that opens to the sidewalk as opposed to the other way around, if you will. And all of that is in front of the gate, so the gate is behind that public space from the sidewalk.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mayor.
So the project contains 2,200 square feet of publicly accessible open space. It's about a little over twice as much as is required by the DSP. Staff believes that the project is consistent with the DSP East Broadway standards and recommends approval of the project with a condition that the applicant shall execute and record a covenant with the city to the satisfaction of the city attorney to codify the height density bonus offered in exchange for additional public open space. And that should be submitted prior to plan check submittal. That concludes my presentation. I can turn it over to Rodney Kahn of Kahn Consulting to further discuss the project.
Is there a density bonus in this?
There is a height and what we call density bonus. It's FAR, basically. It's additional FAR because of the additional publicly accessible open space provided.
So for 1,000 square feet of open space, they get what? Additional?
They get, in this case, they're requesting an additional height and,
How much additional?
it's one additional story, I should say.
Oh, why is it additional?
And let me, 0.5 additional FAR.
Is Mr. Loomis going to talk about some of the staff recommendations after Mr. Khan, or were you not planning on that being part of your presentation? Because if not, I have questions. If you're going to talk about that, then I'll wait.
He can,
I bring
Well,
Mr. Loomis.
my question is, were you going to do a presentation, or should I ask questions now?
ask questions now.
Okay, thank you. So in the staff report, one of the concerns that staff had, there's two concerns that caught my eye. One concern had to do with the height on the Elk Street side. Staff feels comfortable with the Colorado side because, of course, the building's approximately the same height as buildings, very large group of buildings across the street. But they were more concerned with the Elk Street, given that those are more two-story buildings and this one is a larger building.
Right.
And one of the recommendations was interesting to me, and I'll read it. It said, in some respects, swapping two of the fifth-floor units with the covered lanai area on the ground floor might yield a more preferable design by reducing the scale of the Elk elevation while trading a shaded and covered open space for a sun-filled roof terrace with spectacular views. So I wanted you to just elaborate on that. So what you're suggesting is that they consider taking two of the units on the top floor and moving them down and creating, I assume this is open space for the building, that it would move into, not the public open space, and then creating a sort of a rooftop open space where those units had been and moving the units down?
Correct. Currently, the common open space that's for the building residents only is located on the ground floor, and it's actually covered by the floors above it. And the suggestion is that perhaps that could be a unit or two, and the two units that at the top floor that face Elk, those would be located down below, thereby giving the Elk side the appearance of a four-story rather than a five-story building, and perhaps that roof space could then be a deck that would be the common space for the building residents.
Okay, so when they come up, I'd ask the applicant to address that, whether they've considered that, and since it is in the staff report, and what they think of that. My second question, and maybe you could show me on the rendering, because I couldn't quite see it in the renderings, which was the concern about the west facade, I believe. Is it the west facade that would have the faux,
Yes.
the faux facade? So can you show me where that is and what buildings are in front of that? Sort of where the public sees that? I'm not very clear on where that area is.
Yes, the west facade is the top one. Mm-hmm. So this is the building in the foreground that currently is existing and would basically obscure the first two floors of that west facade. However, this portion of the building is, for all practical purposes, on the property line. So all the windows that you see on this elevation, there will be actually, the way it's designed, there would be actual windows and molding on the facade, but directly behind those windows is a wall. So it'd be very similar in some respects to the window treatment you see on Colorado and Central of the movie theater at the Americana.
What's
there are
that?
window features there, but they don't actually go into rooms.
Just out of curiosity, what's the rationale behind not allowing the windows on the property line?
Building code doesn't allow you to have openings directly on the property line. In the event that your neighbor catches on fire, it could then enter into your building. So in order to make those windows that could actually open up into a room, the entire building would have to be set back from the property line 10 or more feet, depending on how many
Right.
windows they had.
And are those windows they're proposing, those fake windows, are they, you said they're actual glass and moldings?
Yes, that's my understanding. I think probably the applicant could speak to how they intend to detail those.
The Americana doesn't have glass, right? It has just kind of concrete cutouts?
They have shutters in some cases.
Shutters, but not glass.
Yeah, so it appears that it's a sort of, the windows are covered in shutters. As far as I know, they don't have glass behind those.
So how do you think that this is going to end up looking from the street?
I think it's probably going to be very similar to the appearance of the Colorado and Central side of the Americana.
Do you have any workarounds? Did you think of any brilliant solutions for this?
You know, we spent a lot of time discussing this with the applicants, and the solution was, provided there are going to be sort of non-window windows, that as long as the best we could do was to detail them exactly the way the real windows would be, and that there would actually be real glass. So, except for the fact that lights aren't coming on and off, and the windows aren't opening up, most people looking at the building would sort of assume that they're just regular windows.
Well, I'm glad to hear that they have glass, because I think that's part of the Americana issue. Not that they should have had glass there, but I think that's why they really don't read like windows, is because they're concrete.
Yeah.
It's just stucco with a shutter on it. So hopefully this will be a better executed illusion.
If I may, in
I've
terms-
actually seen that used in San Diego in the downtown, and you paint it sort of gray behind the glass. And
How does it look?
yeah, from the
good.
street, I thought they were, then I realized they weren't once I went in the building.
I mean, the other consideration here is that the zoning that permits this building to occur also applies to the two properties adjacent. So it's very possible at some point in the future this whole facade might be covered by a building of similar scale. So that was another sort of concern that we talked about, because that site is so narrow.
And I guess I have one more question, and it's going to seem so nitpicky, so I apologize, but, former design review board member. I looked at the materials for the benches and the pots, and I wanted to know what you thought in terms of their style with this building, because the benches are very contemporary, but we have this sort of Tudor revival, very formal style building, and it just seemed really at odds to me. Did you take a look? Did you go that far into this proposal to look at the pots and the benches and the terracotta?
Not quite to sort of deep level, but if it was the council's pleasure, we could certainly work with the applicant to find some bench style or pot style that's more appropriate to this style of building.
Thank you.
If I may, one last thing in terms of the design analysis, it is essentially the same design analysis that was presented when council approved this project in November 2011. So other than sort of discussing the new open space that's being included, it's exactly the same comments when the council approved this project a little less than a year ago. So
We go to the floor plan. What is in the lower left-hand side?
this area,
What is that?
that's the adjacent building.
So how high a building is that?
I believe that's a floor and a half or maybe 2 floors.
2 floors?
Yeah, 2 stories.
2 stories?
Hotel, isn't it?
Yes, if I recall, it's the adjacent hotel. The building is flanked on either side by hotels.
How many units is the total project?
This project here is 50 units.
And the acreage?
It's just right around a half an acre. It's 21,900 square feet.
Okay, I'll start with Rodney Kahn.
Mayor?
Well, he's you're representing the partnership, right, Mr.
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. My name is Rodney Kahn.
Would you need the presentation up?
Yes, there was a brief presentation we put together. Thank you. My offices are located on North Brand Boulevard here in the city of Glendale. A few things I'd like to add to start the presentation. First of all, we're changing from one incentive, the sustainable design incentive, to the public open space incentive. The building itself, everything else is the same. We're not adding square footage, we're not adding units, we're not adding stories, we're not adding any additional square footage at all. A few of the questions that need to be clarified. One was asked by Mr. Manukian in terms of the height of the building, and specifically as it relates to the Americana across the street. How tall is it? If you recall, back in 2011, this is an image, and it shows you it's not slightly less in height. It's 9 feet, 4 inches less in height. So in terms of clarification, our building is lower in story and almost about, like I said, 9 feet, 4 inches lower in height than the building across the street.
That's both buildings, the housing and the Nordstroms?
The Nordstrom, it's very close or similar to in height. This was actually taken back in 2011 before the Nordstrom was under construction. This is the condominium project on the corner of Colorado and Brand, just for perspective. Our project is 100% privately funded. It is designed to meet all of the downtown specific plan standards. So there's no variances, no exceptions are required for us to build our project. As mentioned and as questioned by the council, we work with your city staff to make the changes to the open space or landscaped area. And what we ended up doing was we oriented, as was shown in the slides, we oriented our outdoor seating, fountains, seating areas, gardens, both along Colorado and on Elk, so that not just the residents and the visitors can enjoy it, but also the general public as well. The code requirement requires us to have about 1,095 square feet of public open space. We are more than doubling that. Mr. Manukian also asked about the density bonus. When I think of density bonus, I think of affordable housing, or the SB 1818, or that rule. That's not the density bonus we are exercising. It's rather the downtown specific plan incentive, which allows for the additional floor area, the height, the story, etc. So from my perspective, I look at it, one is related to affordable housing, the other is related to the downtown specific plan. The project itself, in terms of what is being added or what is being changed, I talked about. Council member Friedman, you mentioned, did we consider looking at some other alternatives as it relates specifically to the Elk Avenue elevations? And we did. In fact, we did several variations of it, where the building lost some of the units, it stepped down, some of the units were shifted across, and the problem with that was it made the building look very unsymmetrical, and it made the building look disproportional. So we ended up looking at that, we ended up proposing that, and it didn't work out. So we did explore that. The answer is yes. The second question as it relates to the windows on specifically the west side, what we wanted to do was we wanted to show a very realistic window pattern or fenestration. So not only with the molding and the glass, but we also have the ability to create light that goes on and off in those windows as well. So you'll get this image that that is part of the residential dwelling unit. It isn't a fake window that just sits there or has no glass or has no lighting behind it. So we were able to do that and address that sidewall as well. If I forgot any of the questions that were posed, please ask me again. I'll be happy to answer them. But we felt it was fairly straightforward. We're able to create public open space, which is visible, physical, it could be used, visible, you can actually see it, and we thought that that would be a good direction for us to go. The second thing that I want to just close on is the financing. For this project, in order for us to secure a bond for the sustainable design incentive, the banks and the surety company that issues the bonds needs clarity. And for us, we want to build this project. So in order for us to build this project, we need to go to this incentive, and we are still developing a project that meets the Green Building Code adopted by the city and has many of the sustainable design features we originally are proposing with it. I'll conclude my remarks. If there are further questions, I'll be happy to provide answers.
Any questions?
When was this project in front of, was it in front of the development agency last time? Or
November 15th of 2011.
November 15th. And was it in front of redevelopment or council?
I think it was the agency. Is that correct? Yes.
Hassan? Was it council?
Was it council?
It was in front of the city council because this area, it was not part of the redevelopment area.
Any other questions? Okay, I have one card, Herbert Milano.
Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council, and staff, in 2006, when I filed a lawsuit against the City of Glendale with regard to the environmental impact report for the downtown specific plan, under which this building is being justified, my concern, as it has been my concern since around 2002, has been by the inadequate attention to parkland and the increased amount of density. The Quimby Act of 1975 addresses the issue that none of the monies from Quimby cannot be used for maintenance. It's very clear about that. But yet I have not seen then the use of any type of Quimby funds to increase the amount of parkland, which is the objective of these laws. The fact that this building provides for 1,000 or 2,000 square feet, that's kind of like the equivalent of one apartment-size unit to be provided as open space, obviously could never equate to the necessary, to the needs of all of this community and the hundreds of additional children who will probably be living in this area. This particular building is adjacent, to the Catholic Church. It's adjacent to a very, very small street. It's very tight. That's Elk. And you have a significantly constrained environment of a population that in a way is suffocating just a significant amount of density without the adequate parkland that these residents need. I could address the issues of what impact will a building of this size, 5 stories, along with the other 5-story building down in Colorado, along with the other buildings that are being created. It's almost as if this city council has gone absolutely wild trying to close as many of these mega projects, before the election. I've been and worked in Barcelona for many, many weeks and months. They are able to address their very high density because there is really true public transportation. There is significant amount of venues, especially their own metro, that takes you practically anywhere. We don't have that. So I don't see how the City Council can proceed with projects of this magnitude without the adequate attention to the true open space needs, and now with the significant traffic congestion and the impact that it has overall on in the downtown part of the city. I'm not against development. Don't take me wrong. I'm just against the idea that you don't mitigate significantly the impacts of buildings this size. Thank you.
Okay. Comments from the council? Well, I'll start. I think this is a nice-looking project. It actually goes with the Americana across the street in terms of the architecture. I think it works well with the condominiums at the corner of Brand and Colorado, and the rest of the Americana. I don't think it's quite going to tie in with the Nordstroms, but whatever. It works well with the housing portions. And I think the way it addresses Elk, which is a residential, so really we have an urban setting at one end and meaning Colorado, super high density commuter street, so to speak, along with a residential street on Elk. But I think the design is balanced enough that it'll work with both. And by the way, the design isn't so different from some of the other, and the height isn't so different from some of the other older buildings that were built probably back in the 20s and 30s. Not far from this location, there's one on Central across the street from the Armenian church, and a few others around town. So I think they work well. I think those windows are going to work especially well if they're lit at night. Like I say, in San Diego, I didn't realize that they were, in fact, windows with a wall behind it until I drove into the building. So I think this is going to work well. The one comment I do have, that there is no way that these planters that are shown here, the terracotta planters, the terracotta floor tile, that doesn't go at all. I mean, that's not even in the ballpark, so you have to rethink that. And even some of this brickwork, I'm not sure that color goes with the architectural design. But other than that, other than the sort of accessory terracotta floor tiles and the terracotta pot, I think the rest of the project is work real well there on Colorado, and it is now an abandoned building that's been abandoned for many years, and I think this is a great way to go. Anybody, who's next? Ms. Friedman.
Yeah, I think it's a nice project. There's a simplicity to the building that works very well. I would agree that I would like staff to make it a condition of approval, that staff looks at those materials, the benches, the tile, the pots, because those little details can make a very big difference. And they're doing a sort of a Normandy, Beaux Arts almost, sort of Normandy revival, and then they've got these sort of Spanish materials, and then the bench, which is kind of an 80s postmodern something. And I'd like it all to be more in the style of the building, and I'm sure they don't mind taking a look at all of those sort of ancillary building materials. The fountain's nice, though, they're showing. But otherwise, I think it's going to be an improvement to what's there, certainly. And I appreciate that they're going the extra mile with that faux facade to make it something that really does look like the real thing, as opposed to just plaster with shutters. So I thank them for that.
Next, Mr. Weaver.
Well, we approved this before, no changes made except for the open space creation. We approved it at the time. Council knew when they approved the downtown strategic plan, we took the first block on the south side of Central, put that into the area, knowing fully well it would develop along the south side of Colorado. Get off Colorado from the I-5, you see another apartment structure that's going in. Eventually, you're going to see all that kind of development along the Colorado corridor. From there, probably, it won't go any further east, I'm guessing, than the first block east of Brand. That'd be end of any high-rise development, because it's not zoned for anything else. I think it's fine. You want to change the pots, no big deal to me. I like the treatment you're doing in the false windows. I was wondering, God, why couldn't they put some lighting in there just in case? Just don't forget to throw the switch, because if you have all those lights on at 2 in the morning, people will wonder what's going on. So other than that, I'm fine with it.
Well, we did see this before, and I was in favor of it. I see the modifications that they're making are practical, giving some public space in return for the LEED's certification, which I understand is a little bit difficult with the financing entities. And I like the design. I think that density is where we need it, right there at actually the heart of the city, and I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Menuchyan.
I voted against this project on November 15th. Thank you for giving me the date. I checked on the internet, and I knew I didn't like the project when it first came up today, actually. Could you put that picture? You know, that is a really telling picture for me, because first looking at the building, is that building, it's not across the street from the Americana, is it? It's catty corner from it? What is that street that's going?
Orange.
Is it? Okay.
That's the terminus of Orange Street, which
That's Orange Street. That's
will no longer
that's
exist.
now
passes
Nordstrom
Okay.
is absorbing.
All right, thank you. My concern, it's not just this building, and I'm not singling out this project by itself, actually. And in my opinion, the public open space is really too small to be relevant, and no one's really going to use it, to be kind of practical about it. What is telling is, first, the traffic, that if I were you, I would have taken the picture without the traffic there. Second, looking east on both sides of Colorado right now, there are no buildings like this except for the Americana. And to me, Americana is a unique project that we did similar to the Galleria. But for me to look at this project and think of the future 10, 20 years down the line, and having buildings such as these all the way down Colorado, I wonder what would happen to the traffic on Colorado and the rest of the downtown if we continue in our path of approving high-density apartment buildings or condo units in these areas. For me, 50 units per acre was reasonable when we were looking at the downtown specific plan, and I made that clear back then, and I'm still of that opinion. And I think this project is too dense, in my opinion, and it's just going to set a precedent for a whole number of buildings such as these. And of course, we're not even looking at it from the Elk side, where there's residential buildings, residential housing, 2 stories, and such. Where's the entrance going to be for the cars? Is it going to be on Elk or Colorado? Elk? It just, for me, it's the future looks bleak on the street if we keep approving projects such as these. In terms of design, I really don't like fake windows to begin with, but I understand the necessity in this instance. But I just don't like the zoning in that area, the high density, and I will be voting against it. So.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Move 1A and B.
And
Mr.
a
Mayor,
second.
members of the City Council, that will be with the conditions that were suggested.
With the
That's
plan.
just a question relative to the planner's review of materials in the open space area, including the tile, benches, and pots, to be more in style with the existing building, with the building, proposed building, and would that be subject to the review and approval of the planning director with those
As
modifications?
far as I'm concerned, that's good enough.
If that's, okay,
That's
so it'll
my
be
mo-
amended with that?
That's my motion.
Okay, thank you.
I need a second.
Second?
Roll call.
Council members Friedman,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
No.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
Next item on this agenda is Director of Community Development regarding proposed Kenwood Terrace project to be located at 118 South Kenwood Street. 2A is council motion approving design review submission. At 2B is council motion approving instrument imposing a covenant on real property.
Spears.
Mr. Mayor, again, we're going to be going to Roger Kiesel, our senior planner, to take you through this project.
Good afternoon again, Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council. Again, Roger Kiesel from the Planning Department. Con Consulting is requesting approval of Stage 1, Stage 2 design for the Kenwood Terrace project located at 118 South Kenwood. We will get the pictures up momentarily. Like the previous project, the current proposal is essentially the same as one you approved last year in November as well.
Was it a unanimous approval again?
Probably not, based on your...
Was it the same day that it was?
It was the same day,
Same
yes.
day?
Yeah. So here's the site plan. Try to get this right this time. Kenwood Street is here. The alley is right here. The buildings are just in this area. And the open space is basically in this area here. So the applicant has redesigned the Kenwood Street front setback to qualify for the public open space height density bonus. Again, instead of the sustainable design incentive that you all approved last year. The project is on an approximately 15,000 square foot site. It's located on the east side of Kenwood Street between Broadway and Harvard Street. The building is 5 stories high with a mezzanine. This is the front Kenwood elevation and is about 70 feet in height. This is the view from the alley, and then the south elevation and the north elevation. There are 35 residential units in this building, and they range from 1 bedroom to 4 bedroom in size. 2 subterranean levels of parking, and with containing 66 parking spaces on site. The pedestrian lobby is located on the Kenwood facade of the building, right in this area. And vehicular access will be taken from the eastern alley. As mentioned, the Kenwood Street setback area has been improved to qualify for the DSP open space incentive. As I mentioned before, the DSP requires 5% of the lot area to be publicly accessible open space. And in this project, that translates to 750 square feet of accessible open space, the minimum. The project provides just over 1,600 square feet of publicly accessible open space, which allows it to be eligible for the height density bonus. And again, that area is this area here.
Which area?
Sorry. Starting from south.
What street is that?
This is Kenwood. And it's the full frontage of Kenwood, and then it goes up, then in a little bit, and then takes into account this area.
Isn't that like the front yard of the building, pretty much?
It is, yes. Yeah, it can.
Because you're going all the way to the wall of the
building.
Of the facade of the building,
Correct.
basically.
Yeah.
That's what you're indicating.
Correct.
So they can say, okay, all the way, it's open space, but is it accessible as open space?
Right, it's publicly accessible. This area here is the more functional part in terms of the required wheelchair access. This is the main steps up to the entry gate into the project. This area here, though, is designed with, again, like a seating wall along the street here.
Seating wall?
Yeah, it's a low wall that you can sit on. And then there are steps up in this area here to enter a larger seating area. There's this area where I'm pointing to here is also a low wall that you can sit on, as well as this area here. There's a little walkway here, and there's also a fountain right in this area. So this is the more, the area where the public nearby residents who are walking can utilize, whereas this is the more functional area.
I'm just, if I may, Mr. Mayor, how much more benefit are they getting by providing this open space? Is the cost benefit, is the cost worth the benefit that, or is the benefit, what is the benefit to the community? I mean, are they getting, they're getting a full story. What is the community getting in return? I mean, 1,000 square foot of open space in front of a building, it's probably already there. What is the benefit to the community? If they're getting a whole story of condos or apartment units, that's considerable millions of dollars. But what is the community getting in return?
Mr. Mnuchin, to sort of do the ratio, the project based on the average number, the average density that they're getting, so many square feet per, there are 35 units total. Okay. Certain number of square footage, divide that out, there's an average of roughly 1,100 square feet per unit. Okay. The additional square footage they're getting by providing this bonus equals a little more than about 3 units, if I recall, if I did my math correctly on back of envelope. The community is getting the benefit of this additional garden space, which, as Roger was explaining, is actually not raised up at the same level as what is the entrance to the building lobby. It's actually down another 2 steps and has a whole separate set of stairs right here into a seating area. So it's roughly, Roger, what's the exact number on this square footage? As you were saying, roughly another 1,000 square feet of public garden accessible to the sidewalk. That's the community benefit.
Where's the sidewalk in that drawing?
This is the sidewalk running right up here.
Okay, so
the public access area would be this area right here, separate set of stairs, seating area, totally independent.
With a wall in front of it.
This would be a planting wall that'd be roughly 24 inches high. So
would that be like a barrier for people? If I saw a planting wall, I would immediately think that that's private.
That's a major concern with these kind of spaces. What we attempted to do is that this wall is no more than 24 inches high, and it has a very broad sort of lip, if you will. So from the sidewalk, you could simply sit down on it. It's at the right height to be a bench, a kind of built-in bench. And then this set of stairs is only 2 steps to get up to a kind of raised area. One of the thoughts was, if you want to have a public sort of garden for somebody who's out walking around the neighborhood, to be with their neighbors, sit down and have a conversation, you may not want to be right exactly on top of the sidewalk. You might want to be 1 or 2 steps removed, so you're somewhat private, not exactly on the sidewalk like a sort of transit bench. So that's the logic of having that space 2 steps raised.
Let me say before you speak, from my perspective, the public benefit also is the fact that you're adding units. Rents, if you believe in free markets, rents are sure to go down with the type of units that are being built. So I think that's a public benefit when we provide more housing for people that want to live in Glendale, many of whom are forced out because the rental units are so high. So that's one benefit that I see. Are these going to be condos or rentals? They're set up for condominium, but there'll be rentals in the meantime.
Converted to condos. That's what the applicants say. If I may, Mr. Mayor, answer some, go back 2 steps to why actually we presented this incentive in the downtown specific plan. The way that zoning usually works is that you give, especially in these areas, you give people the authority or the chance to build right onto the property line, or you can require setbacks. And instead of doing that, and we do know that for us to come up with urban parks or pocket parks that are funded by the public, that's becoming more and more difficult and expensive. So one planning idea that people are using across, especially in California and all the way in the West Coast, is ideas like this, that you create walkable areas in the downtown areas. And instead of creating like a pocket park or having the outdoor courtyard that the private property is dedicating be like a park, you're creating areas of interest that if you are walking with people, you have a chance to sit down. If you're walking your dog, you get a chance to sit down, maybe bring your coffee and have a chat with people, and then have these nodes that as you're walking, there are little breaks. That is really the intent of it. It was never our claim or intent to say that it's anything more than that. So to the extent that you're raising questions about the way that the individual design of the projects is incorporated, I think that's really legitimate. That gives us a lot of cue as to how to lead the future applicants as they come forward. But the idea is to make it accessible and comfortable to take a break from the sidewalk that sometimes is too narrow and too uncomfortable for people to hang out.
Can you show me on there where Broadway is? I'm having a lot of trouble orienting this building, even with the plans that I have in my packet.
And this drawing north is down, so this hatched area is the 416 project, so Broadway is approximately right here. The plaza in front of that building that one hopes to be occupied with the cafe and has that fountain is right about in this location.
So that's south of there, you said, or north?
This building would be the lot directly south of the 416 building on Kenwood. It's actually two lots.
See,
416 building?
The 416 is the apartment building on Broadway, on the south side of Broadway between Kenwood and Jackson.
But the fountain, the big fountain that people sometimes go into in the summer. What is the material that's on the front that looks like hardy board or something on the rendering?
I believe, if I recall correctly, and the applicant addressed that, I believe it's actually a stone finish.
It's like a stone finish it's like a horizontal stone finish?
Yes.
How close is this material to what I'm seeing on the rendering? Because it looks like planks of wood. So is it stone that is uninterrupted for that entire distance?
Well, there would be eventually at some point a vertical joint between the stones and then a kind of more pronounced horizontal joint.
But is this those blocks that you see a lot on apartment buildings kind of plastered on the front?
I'd kind of defer to the applicant on specifics on those.
Do we have any kind of material board or anything we can look at? Yeah? I'm looking in my packet, and I guess it's maybe I'm just lost in it. I mean, something that's actually photographs and not drawings.
I'm hearing page 16
Page
of
16,
the application.
14, 15, 16. Okay, so what I'm seeing, though, is drawings. There's no photographs. It's a square with lines drawn on it. That's not. How can I take that as a material board? The only material that's shown on here that's photographed is a railing. The rest is literally a square with lines going through it. It's not a photograph of anything. I'd kind of like to know what the material is.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Rodney Kahn.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. Rodney Kahn once again. I'd like to start off my presentation by orienting the Council with the project. This is our site here. Directly across the street from us is the Casa de la Paloma, and that's a 9 to 10-story affordable senior housing project. Directly north of us, as mentioned by the City staff, is up in this area, and that's the 416. So this is an interior site. Mr. Manukian, if you go back to your records, you actually voted yes on this project originally.
I was hoping you weren't going to notice that.
It was and let me further, it was a unanimous 5-0 vote, and the building has not changed at all.
I reserve the right to change my vote.
A few things I'd like to add on top of that. We are consistent with the downtown specific plan. And as mentioned by your staff in terms of the additional public open space. And I want to clarify this because it sounds like, well, we're only doing the public open space and that's the only open space we're doing for the entire project. That's totally incorrect. We are doing the 1,700 square feet of public open space as one component. We also have common open space, and we also have private open space, and that totals about 8,000 square feet on top of that. So it's not just that component, it is open space. That's one piece of the open space puzzle. The project itself, as I mentioned, is fairly straightforward. I want to show you a few slides that will hopefully address some of this a little clearer. The last slide that you had up as the image as the first floor was very busy, and it was difficult to read. But if you can see this area here, this is the area that we talked about as being added or different from what you saw last time. And so there is a fountain here, and you can see that in your packet as well. There's additional landscaping and planting, and all of these areas are planter seating walls all along here. So in terms of people coming over, there's an access point here that's wider that welcomes them in, and people can sit and talk and converse and be in this area and feel welcome. This area is more of the building function, which is having to do with the steps leading up into the building, along with the handicap and some landscape area. This is not what we're envisioning people sitting and using this public open space. We are completely envisioning that people would come across the street from the Affordable Senior Project, have a place to sit, have a fountain, have an area to converse and to be in. And we think this is very good, very functional communal space. The project itself, if you've had a chance to go out to the site, it's actually under construction. Demolition has taken place of the existing building. They're now doing the shoring for the project. And similar to the last project, the purpose is to still do sustainable design in terms of the building itself and what we're doing for the improvements, but the incentive is now the public open space incentive, which we qualify for. Anyway, that concludes my presentation and remarks. If you have questions, the owners here, along with the architect and myself, we'd be happy to provide answers. Thank you.
I'd still like to know what that stone is in the front.
I'm sorry I didn't include that.
What the other materials are on the building.
I was so excited about telling Mr. Manukian that he voted yes for it, I forgot. The stone itself is a rough, chiseled Jerusalem stone.
And is it truly horizontal for a distance before it's joined together the way it looks in the rendering?
Yes.
Is it small?
If I could ask...
You have to come to the podium.
Andre Babakanlu, he's the owner, developer, builder, so he'll know specifically.
And give us your name for the record.
Good evening, Andranik Babakanlu, Mr. Mayor, Honorable Councilman. It's called Jerusalem stone. It's chiseled and it's in different variable length, and the top portion is smooth.
Okay.
So they can have a seating.
Thank you. Next time for design review, I'd love to have actual material or at least a photograph.
Certainly.
You're here a lot.
Sure.
Do you have any fake windows on this side?
No, Mr. Manukian, we do not.
I'm trying.
Any other questions?
Fake grass.
It's too late.
All right, thank you. I have a card, Herbert Milano.
Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council, my name is Herbert Milano. You know, I sit here listening to this charade, because this is really what it's turned out to be, a charade. The charade of open space, the charade that we're going to have a communal space, the charade that people from walking on the streets are going to find a place in this building to commiserate and have coffee and chat. This is a joke. The real needs of the population are real open space, real parkland. The 416 building and this building and the other building that is being proposed by Mr. Khan himself, his own project, add significantly to the population density of this area. And the only open space that the city has that's accessible to all of those residents is Central Park, an area that the city manager and the city planning staff screwed it up royally. And I call it that way because it was a significant, almost 3-acre parkland that today is being used, a significant amount of it, for parking. That is a park area that should have been with underground parking and increasing the amount of open space. Why demand that these builders create this fictitious open space? just so that we can come here and pretend that we're giving open space when it's not. This is a private area that adds, we're just simply replacing the word front setback for the word private open space. It's a joke. Let's be real. The increased density needs public parkland and public open space. There is no point in adding additional burdens to a private developer when in fact what you need to do is face the reality that you need to fix Central Park. That would be additional space. You could probably get another acre, maybe 2 acres of additional space just 3 blocks from there. And that's what the city needs to do. We don't need to redo the central library, need to put additional entrances and exits. What you need to do is increase the open space. There's your answer. It's right there. You're not going to impact in terms of the additional cost to the city with regard to how you use that additional property tax revenue. Use and change that particular parkland. That was the whole idea behind my discussions and the whole concept behind the lawsuit, to increase the real public open space for all of these families and for neighborhood families to take advantage of. The issues here are how does this impact the community? I already know from the finances of the city that every dollar that comes from property tax goes right into the employees' pockets, or at least to their pension system. We get nothing. The public gets absolutely nothing from this, not even the open parkland. Please address the issue of Central Park and address the public needs of open space. This is fiction.
Okay, any comments?
Yeah.
Mr. Weaver?
Well, many times during the development of the ARC, we talked about eventually, when we have the money, putting underground parking in Central Park there. And I think that is fully expected to be done when we have the money, and probably tied in with the development or the redevelopment of the Masonic Lodge and the vacant lot, the south and north, tying it all together with a couple levels of underground parking. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of money today, so that's coming. This project park itself, that 9-story building, what do you call it, down the street there? That used to be the library where I would go and study and do my homework when I was going to college. I drive by there, I don't see hordes of cars and everything pouring in and out all day long, 9 stories tall. Well, most people live there, a lot of them walk. Others that drive, most people, they're working, they go in the morning, certain hours, they come back in the evening. We thought all this out. Now, as far as I can tell, the public open space is a joke, but I participated in creating that. I just soon go in and change the code. I get tired of this. I consider Mickey Mouse little public open space. We're making the developers create it, and who's going to go sit there? Not really. But the code does permit it now, and if a developer wants to take advantage of what the city offers him and he stays within the bounds of the codes, who am I to say he can't do it? So maybe we ought to agendize sometime in the future a discussion of what is public open space and what does it mean. Must be another mechanism, another way to handle it, but that's for another day, not today. Acceptable. I know what's out there now, has been out there, and it sure hasn't been much. What, parking lot in an old run-down building. So this is okay with me. It's the areas that we talked to put housing. Thing I fought for better part of 16 years here is to stop development in the residential zones. More condos, apartments out in residential areas, because that increases foot traffic, cars, population. Residential zones are already too crowded. The whole reason for this is to concentrate any growth of residential downtown, where hopefully we will encourage people to walk from here to there. put it out in the residential, whether it's north, south, east, west, they're going to drive. Because we do not have enough transportation modes at this time to handle it. So I played a part in developing that. I think that's the right way to go for the city I was raised in.
Ms. Friedman?
Mr. Hagani, do we have any projects with this public open space that are built and in the works?
I'm looking at Mr. Loomis because I think we have several that are in the works.
I know in the works, but anything that's actually operational that we could evaluate how this is working?
No, none that are
About
built using
416,
this particular incentive.
Building right in front of it.
416 seems to kind of have, they didn't take advantage of the incentives.
That predates, the approvals of that predate the downtown specific plan.
So that was more just a design that they came up with. It wasn't them
Meaning
taking-
whatever code standards were in place at that time. There are two other projects on Central that have also utilized this, actually to get additional density, square footage, rather than the additional height.
Okay, thank you.
So those are the only two off the top of my head.
Thanks. So I wasn't aware, because I wasn't here when the downtown specific plan was adopted. I wasn't on council. I wasn't aware about this open space incentive until fairly recently when some of these projects started coming in. I think it's an interesting concept. When I lived in New York, you see this quite a bit with commercial properties in New York City. And some of the most successful kind of parklets are actually these common spaces in front of commercial buildings. And they really, really are used. And people definitely congregate to those areas. And I don't know when they started doing them. I think the older buildings, 30s and 40s, don't have them. They're built right up to the front. But sometime, it must have been 70s, 80s, 60s, maybe 60s, they started doing this. Yeah, 60s. And those buildings are really amazing. I mean, people really do go and use them. So will this translate to residential? I don't know, because there is that expectation that anything that's in front of a residential building kind of belongs to the residents of that building. I think that it has to be really carefully designed. And certainly, I understand the impetus behind having that wall, because you do, if you're going to sit, you want this pleasant area that's kind of protected, that's more garden-like, and that is more pleasant. But on the other hand, it's a lot more obvious to the public that it's for them if it's right at the sidewalk level, somehow built into just an at-grade sidewalk, kind of like the 416 project around the corner, which people do use, even though it doesn't have benches, but people do sit on the fountain, and some people kind of hang out there a little bit. It could be a lot more inviting, but you see the concept, I think, a little bit in that space. I guess I would ask staff that as we see more of these come forward, to really think about that and give that a lot of attention. Is this inviting? Is this something the public's really going to understand is for them? I wonder if a simple fix for now to sort of train the public is to hang up a sign that says something like, "Public, please use our garden." I don't know. Something that tells people that it's permissible to sit there. Because I know if it was me, I probably would not think that this was for me to sit in. I would think it was part of the private project. I don't know whether it's worth looking at that area again to, kind of entering in the side. You can come up if you want. Kind of entering in the side makes it even more feel, or maybe putting that entrance in the middle so that it is more inviting. I don't know. But I think that for a public that's used to this to some extent with commercial buildings but not used to it with residential buildings, I think it's a concept that could work, but people are going to have to be trained. They're going to have to understand that it's for them. And how do they tell the difference between one that is public and one that's not public? For this to really work, we have to come up with a strategy to make that impression to the public. Did you have a thought?
Mr. Mayor, if I may respond, actually, Mr. Loomis and I have been talking about this very item, and the council comments really are helpful to us because oftentimes we explain the intent of the public, the open space incentive, and yes, oftentimes the applicants figure out a way to give something so that they can still, but their focus is on the additional height and density. So Mr. Loomis actually has been talking to me about finding ways to fine-tune the language of the public open space to make it much more directive, much more clear in terms of addressing the issues that you all have raised today. And your comments are well taken, and we do think we understand what you mean by that. That and we are experimenting a little bit. We're doing a transitional urban housing area in downtown Glendale, and we're experimenting with things that traditionally were done in commercial areas, and we're saying how could we combine the two. And I think these comments are very well taken, and we've taken very good notes about these. And I think in terms of project review, even if we don't fine-tune the code yet, we can still work with the applicants to address some of these comments in the upcoming project.
Mr. Freeman, could I add on a comment on that?
Yeah, and then I'll finish up.
Common space is open space made up of common space and public space.
There are two different types. One is publicly accessible and one is not.
If the public space was taken out of the component and the open space meant common space will be increased beyond what it is now for the convenience of the people living there.
Well, that was a conversation we originally had, and the idea was that it's one thing to give more amenities for that, we could have just increased the required public common space for the project. But we thought, and one of the ideas we discussed with the council at the time was that because we're experimenting with higher density residential in downtown, we might as well look, in addition to the common open space for the residents, we might look into how we can create these particular breaks and reliefs in the pedestrian experience. So that was the original intention. But if the council would want us to go and say...
let me give my opinion. Look, I think this is a very good idea. We're not creating basketball courts or mini parks or anything else. We're giving people that walk up and down sidewalks the opportunity to, let's stop. Maybe they know someone, or in this case, the seniors from the building across the street might eventually wind up hanging there. Certainly, you see seniors all over the city of Glendale kind of on curbs. There's a number of them that meet off of Glen Oaks Boulevard, another crew that meets over here. I drive by all the time. I see them there. Sometimes they bring little chairs to sit down. So I think the concept is great, and I'm all for it. I don't think we need to do anything other than just build it. And that's it. If there's a little sign, fine, but I don't think it's necessary to...
Can I finish my comments first, actually?
I was going to ask a zoning question, but go ahead.
Okay, let me finish up
Leading
first.
to the same thing.
So thanks. No, I agree with Mr. Quintero. I think it is a good idea and certainly worth experimenting with. I mean, it's going to take several of these to, you can't just have one. If it's really going to be part of the experience of people walking around, you have to have a bunch of them. And I think it could really work. All I'm asking for is for staff to really think design-wise how we signal to the public that it's open space. The last one, the way it had benches facing outward, kind of had these shallow steps and was partially at grade, I think is more successful from what I can see on the rendering for this one. I'm okay with the project. I'm going to approve it, but I would like to ask staff to, if possible, given that they're already under construction, to take a look at this to see if there are some tweaks you can do to make this something that is more obvious to the public that it's for their use. Because I think that the way this one's designed with a wall in front that you go around the side, it's a great idea if people, know that they can use it because it gives them that protection, but I don't think they're going to know. I don't think they're going to think they can walk around to the side of this and go in behind a wall, given that that's not usually what you expect from a housing project. I would like you to work with them to look at some other options to making this pleasurable, but obviously open to the public. I don't think this one is doing that. I really don't. So that would be my... something I would like to put in the condition that you continue to tweak that. But for the record, I think this is a good idea. We've all seen this work for commercial projects. We all know what it's like to walk around a city where in the front of an office building it has, a little plaza and there's benches and you use that. So to translate that for residential, I think is a very interesting idea in a downtown area. So I don't want to go back and rethink it. I think that the council did a great thing when they adopted this. So I guess those are my comments. And, just take a look at the stone, what they're using. I would appreciate if staff, for design review boards in the future, it really should be staff's responsibility to make sure we have, if not a material board, at least a photograph of what the materials are. And there's nothing in this packet for that material. And one thing that can really make a building look cheesy is bad stone bad veneers. So, if they're really three-dimensional and they look like they have depth, great. If there's something that sort of looks like they were stuck on, not so good. So maybe just take a look at that as well. Thank you.
I have a zoning question. What is the requirement for a project like this? What is the setback requirement for a project like this?
In the 6 feet is in the East Broadway area, this is located in that, it's 6 feet as a setback requirement.
And this open space is in addition to the 6
It's
feet?
in addition to that.
Okay.
It's like-
All right, thank you. I'll make my comments. To begin with, I'll be consistent with my vote and vote in favor of the project. I will disagree with our good mayor in terms of having higher density multi-family units in the downtown does not necessarily benefit the community. I do understand the intent of the downtown specific plan as it relates to these additional setbacks, I'll call them. Maybe calling it open space is not the right thing to say. I think if we're trying to encourage these projects to increase their front setbacks, it certainly is achieving that end, and I understand that, and the intent should be there. I don't know if I'm in favor of the sizes and all that. That's probably something that we could discuss and fine-tune. And as far as this project is concerned, I certainly agree with Councilmember Friedman in terms of doing something a little different with the wall and everything. Maybe putting a sign might be a good idea, but I'm not going to put it as a condition. That's up to the developer. But maybe in the future, the design should be such that it actually it's not a basketball court, but it's somewhere that is inviting, that says this is open space, just from its aesthetics, not necessarily sign. So this is a smaller project, so I will vote for it, and I'm glad it doesn't have any fake windows, which is also a benefit. So that's my comment.
Jerry.
Thank you. So on the instant case, the case before us is we have a developer who had previously opted for the LEED certification to get the density bonus. And again, because of problems with financing and obtaining a bond for that, he went back and opted for the public open space. So on this particular project, I'm going to be consistent and approve it. However, I have been surprised time and time again by the bonuses that developers obtain when they're presenting their plans and number of units and density and height, etc. I'm literally surprised. So what I would like to do, if I can get a colleague to vote with me, is to put this on the future agenda for the City Council to review all the density bonuses and all bonuses, all ups and bonuses and increased densities, whether it's state mandated, SB 1818, or whether it's our own city imposed bonuses, whether it's LEED certification, open space, whatever else there is, because I'm sensing that there's a lot more development going in than I initially anticipated when I approved the downtown specific plan. I would further like to review the park impact fees, park and library impact fees that we had previously imposed. The fear back then was that no one's going to develop, we're not going to have any developers coming in, there's not going to be enough money in the projects. I think clearly, and just look back the last 3 or 4 months, we have had a avalanche of development projects. That tells me that there's still money on the table to build the parks and the libraries that we were committed to build 4 years ago when we instituted the park impact fees, maybe longer, 5 years, perhaps 6 years. And I'd like to review that also. So, will someone agree to putting the...
I will agree.
I'll agree, too. I
To
alluded
both.
to it.
Okay,
Just
so
remember,
there's two things.
when we did the downtown specific plan, we didn't have any projects to relate to.
Yes,
Now we're starting to
correct.
see the impacts. So now is a good time to revisit.
So one is the park impact fees, the other is a review of the bonuses under the current downtown specific.
Unless you want to make comments, Mr. Mayor, my greatest objection at that time of the downtown specific plan was the bonuses. And some of the areas had 100% bonus, if I recollect correctly. Is that still the case? Like, they had 6 stories. If they do a certain thing, they would get 12 stories?
There would be, yes, the hotel use for certain
Okay.
areas, we designated that because hotels were identified as an economically beneficial use that we
Any
would-
other uses that would get bonus?
That would get 100%, no, not really.
Affordable housing,
Yes.
historic preservation, and the public open
Okay,
space.
affordable housing, that's fine.
And I must say that the affordable housing incentive, we came up before State SB 1818 was introduced.
Yes, I know.
And since this State SB 1818 has been introduced, people have opted for that as opposed to this because SB 1818 gives them actually more than what the DSB did.
Gives them more than 100% bonus?
Yes, in some cases, they're required to provide less for what they get
I see.
in return.
Okay.
Therefore, it's
a cost-benefit analysis.
It's a cost-benefit
for them.
analysis. SB 1818 is to their benefit.
Okay.
Do you remember the date of that vote?
Oh, but I will.
Were you a yes on that vote?
No, I was a no on that vote.
Okay, any comments about the project? Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to A and B with the condition that what staff will
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council, my understanding is that prior to the submission of the project at plan check, that the developer shall continue to work with the city's urban designer on the design of the open space area to ensure the appearance of public accessibility to that open space area, and that would be subject to the review and approval of the Director of Community Development. Does that capture the concept? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Apparently it does. That's my motion.
Okay.
Second.
One more
Mr.
thing.
Mnuchin.
The art fee of $57,977, that's a fee, it's not an art piece, right? The art fee that is specified in the report?
Councilman Mnuchin, yes, we will pay the arts fee.
Okay.
Also, I'd like to mention about the parks fee on this particular project. Although it went through the development agreement and could have locked in and paid the lesser fee, it paid the current fee, which is the $7,000, so a credit to the developer for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
Other items.
Move to adjourn for
Second.
council?
We are adjourned.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, will you read the closed session?